Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Listen, this one is, I don't know, it's not that long, and I don't think it's going to be all that, you know, uh, I don't know, informative. She answers a couple of questions. I did look at it, but, you know, I mean, I wasn't too excited. It wasn't too much to say that we don't already know. I just think that one of the biggest issues I think that's happening for the Republicans is that they're losing the message. They're losing the message wars. It's so funny how poorly they're doing in getting the message across, especially when you're in the right, when it comes to immigration and enforcing laws. And they touched upon it when Holman was talking about the biggest reason why we have so much consternation with ICE is because of the open rebellion of the states. And they just haven't really got that message across. And the Grammys didn't help with, idiots like uh, Billie Eilish coming out and saying, the kind of things that they're saying about F-ICE and stuff like that. And nobody really challenging the fact that, if there's no enforcement on immigration laws, what kind of country will we have we saw what happened after 4 years, but another 4 years of open borders like that, our country is going to be lost. And all these so-called welcoming these illegal aliens. I don't care if you like them or not. If you're not enforcing your immigration laws, you don't have a country. And then hypocrites like Billie Eilish, who lives in a 14-50 million dollar mansion on so-called stolen land, which is, we need to stop saying it. The land, we're never giving the land back. But you can't be a hypocrite either, because she's not, paying homage to the Indians the Native Americans that she's took the tribal land from to build a house. She's not paying them rent. And if she is, she should have came out and said that. But anyway, let's listen to Caroline and see what she has to say. And we'll go from there.
Headspace, and he was looking forward to sitting down with President Petro to have a conversation. So we will all see how that went together.
Thank you so much, Caroline. What does President Trump mean when he says Republicans ought to nationalize voting? What does that look like in practice?
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. And he spoke with the speaker directly about that yesterday, about the need to get that bill on the floor for a vote, because it provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID. I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election. And that's something the president wants to see happen. So that's what he was referring to.
Well, we have to ask ourselves. I'm more of an independent. I'm still a registered Democrat, believe it or not, even though I've been more of an independent since 2020. But we need to ask ourselves: Is Johnson and Thune doing any real good? I mean, how come we don't have more legislation passing through, at least brought to the House floor? What are these guys doing? I don't really believe they. First of all, I don't really believe they like Trump that much. I know they're trying to be loyal to the party. But yeah, the SAVE Act is cool, but it's a federal law that we're trying to pass. And the issues that we really have, to tell you the truth, is at the local level. I mean, the local level, the liberals dominate the local levels. And they're even starting to make inroads at the local level in the red states. That loss in Texas was a big deal, man. Unfortunately, I just think the messaging is so bad by the Republicans that even though you're doing right, it's not resonating with the independents, who are probably going to be the biggest voting bloc, in the United States in the next presidential election.
He does believe the state should oversee.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
Just to follow up on that, he said specifically that they should take over elections in 15 states. Can you tell us what he meant by that? What 15 states he's referring to in terms of Republicans taking over elections?
Again, what I was just telling you is that with the passage of the SAVE Act, voter ID will be implemented across all 50 states. The president was referring to specific states in which we have seen a high degree of fraud. If you look at states like California, or if you look at New York City, for example, non-citizens are allowed to vote in elections in places like California and New York City. That just creates a system, an electoral system, that is absolutely ripe with fraud. And you cannot deny the fact that, unfortunately, there are millions of people who have questions about that, as does the president. He wants to make it right, and the SAVE Act is a solution to doing it.
Yeah, so I mean, I got to look at the SAVE Act myself, but I know he's trying to get a federal law across all 50 states, but that still doesn't cut down to the lowest levels. And I'm not so sure that the federal law that they pass can trump the state and local elections with the policies trying to put in place. So for the presidency, yeah, we don't want foreigners, but it's really at the grassroots level where the biggest changes happen for the people in that community. And right now, man, the illegal aliens are crushing American citizens in those blue states. And believe it or not, there are people who are Republicans and independents in the blue states that don't want to live under the tyranny of people from, trash countries, if you want to say it that way, countries that don't have any governance and socialistic ideas, man. People are living in quiet desperation in those blue states. And I'm not so sure the SAVE Act is going to save them.
Daniel, good to see you.
The January ISM manufacturing PMI hit a score of more than 52. It's the best score since August of 2022. What should that tell Americans about manufacturing activity possibly surging under the Trump administration?
Well, the president's tariffs are working, and his economic agenda is working. When you combine tariffs and reshoring American manufacturing and investments in this country, which the president has played a huge role in directly recruiting those investments from countries and companies all over the world to the United States, you're creating jobs. We've seen construction jobs have surged in the past few months. That's because those factories are being built right here in the United States, and we're putting Americans to work. So our manufacturing sector is obviously something the president cares a lot about. That's why he's so determined and dedicated to his tariff policy, which, as you all saw yesterday, the president struck another great trade deal with India. He spoke with Prime Minister Modi directly. They share a very good relationship. India committed to not only no longer purchasing Russian oil, but buying oil from the United States, also perhaps from Venezuela too, which we know will now have a direct benefit on the United States and the American people. And in addition to that, Prime Minister Modi committed to $500 billion of investments into the United States, including for transportation, for energy, and for agricultural products as well. So this is another great trade deal, thanks to President.
Listen, I agree with that. Nobody knew about these tariffs and how they would work. And on April 7th, if you look at the stock market, it hit an all-time low when he started first unleashing the tariffs. Not all-time low, but a 52-week low. And since then, the market has bounced back from that low in April of 25 to where it's at now. So the uncertainty over tariffs still exists, but it's not perturbating the market the way it did before. And it's hard to deny that our trade deficit with the rest of the world has balanced out pretty much. And I think the court case on tariffs is still in the hands of the Supreme Court. So I think we need to still hear the final word on that. So if they pull that back, there's no money we're going to be giving back to people. So there'll be corporations and stuff trying to sue the United States to get money back. And that's not going to work well either. So Supreme Court, do your thing.
President Trump.
Why was Tulsi Gabbard involved in a domestic law enforcement search in Georgia?
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director, Kash Patel, This is a coordinated whole of government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the president tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue that most people want to see solved. Maybe you don't, but I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard is focused on doing.
Is there something specific that the president has concerns about that led him to ask the director of national intelligence to go down to Fulton County?
I just explained the president's concerns with voting in this country, and it's something that he wants to see solved for future elections. And I think that's something all Americans.
Where's the lies, though? Where's the lies? I mean, she's pretty good at her job, you know. So we got a lot of spin doctors out there, and she's just one of the best. But I think on the surface, I mean, these are things that you don't need to lie about, you know. I think it's some things are left up into interpretation, and a lot of emotions are involved. But the stuff she's saying right now don't sound like lies to me.
Can get behind.
President Petro drug dealer, thug, lunatic, and President Petro has called the American army to not pay attention to President Trump. Do you think President Trump had a hope that this relationship could be fixed?
I think the president invited President Petro and accepted that offer for him to meet President Petro, and the president spoke a few weeks ago. As you know, President Petro said he'd love to come to Washington. President Trump said, sure, come. So I think that speaks for itself. And again, I'm sure the president will provide a readout of that meeting.
Sean, given the recent news and what just happened, how much does this escalate tensions ahead of these critical talks that are happening with Witkoff?
Well, look, I just spoke with Special Envoy Witkoff, and these talks, as of right now, are still scheduled. President Trump is always wanting to pursue diplomacy first, but obviously it takes two to tango. You need a willing partner to achieve diplomacy, and that's something that Special Envoy Witkoff is intent on exploring and discussing. As always, though, of course, the president has a range of options on the table with respect to Iran. As commander-in-chief, I think they learned that quite well last year with the strike in Operation Midnight Hammer, which was wildly successful and obliterated their nuclear capabilities. But those talks will continue later this week as far as we're concerned right now.
Yeah, but, you know, listen, there's no upside to killing Iranians, okay? I mean, you know, you can't tell people you're going to save them if you're going to have to kill half their country. You know, so we need to take war off the table. Don't call yourself some peacemaker and you're threatening Iran. Now, you know, I think it's admirable that if he really did stop them from massacring 800 people who were incarcerated, well, that's a good thing. But when you have to try to stop people from killing people with trying to kill some other people, I mean, that's not really a diplomatic solution. There's got to be some other thing, and we got to stop working for Israel in our dealings with Iran. That's a big problem because Netanyahu wants us to go to war and be his proxy. And we shouldn't be anybody's bitch on the world stage, not America. If anything, it should always be the other way around. So that's a big mistake in one of the planks in President Trump's eye, his undying, wavering support to a country that I don't think gives two shits about us as long as they could use us. And that's the big mistake.
President Trump was talking yesterday about how President Putin had agreed to a week-long halt on attacks on Ukraine because of the cold weather. But today we've seen that Russia has launched some of the heaviest attacks this month. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I spoke with the president about it this morning, and his reaction was unfortunately unsurprised. These are two countries who have been engaged in a very brutal war for several years, a war that would have never started if the president were still in office. It started because of the weakness and incompetence of the previous president, Joe Biden, and that's why the president continues so aggressively to pursue diplomacy to end this war. That's why Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in Abu Dhabi tomorrow for another round of trilateral talks. I would note the trilateral talks that took place last week or the week prior are historic by nature. Never before have all three of our countries really been able to sit down at the negotiating table to move the ball forward towards peace. So Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner and President Trump made the impossible possible with respect to peace in the Middle East. And I know they're looking to do the same with respect to the Russia-Ukraine war as well.
That's the one part of this whole thing. The Russian-Ukraine war is the one element that humbles Trump. because he thought he could just walk in and stop this thing. But I don't think Putin respects him in that kind of way. The fact that he's involved is more. I think is more important for Putin to make sure that whatever happens, he's neck and neck with Trump and not, beholden. I don't even know how much he cares about, Ukraine from the standpoint that if this war stops and Trump gets all the accolades and he's like some kind of junior partner in this whole thing to stop, I don't think Putin wants that. That's why at every turn he says some shit to Trump, but does the opposite. I think he'll massacre every man in his country to not lose face. And that's I'm getting older, and I hope I never turn into these kind of men. But these old farts, they don't have nothing to lose, right? You 80 years old, whatever, 70 something, you don't really have any incentive to be any different than you are right now. And I don't see Putin backing down for none of this shit. I really don't. And so it's unfortunate for their people in Russia and Ukraine that they got the worst kind of leaders in the world putting them to death for something stupid. And so there you go. I don't think this war is going to end during Trump's presidency.
On Harvard, the president said yesterday he's now seeking $1 billion from Harvard. One, how do you arrive at that number? And two, he said he wants criminal, not just civil, charges against individuals at Harvard. Does he want to see Harvard officials arrested there criminally?
Look, I will let the president and also the Justice Department and those who will be pursuing that against Harvard speak on the specifics of that matter. But I know that the president wants to see a deal struck with Harvard that is appropriate and that ensures they are held responsible for the criminal behavior, the illegal behavior, the harassment and the targeting of Jewish American students on their campus that took place over the course of the last several years. This is something the administration has been working on over the course of the last year, and the president himself has been directly involved, as evidenced by that True Social statement.
What does President Trump want to see happen during this 2-week negotiation period for DHS funding? Is he confident that a deal will be reached? And what specifically is he willing to accept on some of the ICE and Border Patrol reforms that Democrats are asking for?
Well, look, President Trump will be the ultimate decider of any policy changes on anything, especially with respect to immigration enforcement. What I will tell you is the president is never going to waver in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and protecting the public safety of the American people, in his ardent support of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, who unfortunately the Democrat Party has made a decision to demonize. I heard Senator Schumer referring to them as Donald Trump's Nazi secret police force, I believe were his words. I don't recall that same language being used when President Obama was in the White House and was deporting millions of illegal aliens from our country using this very same agency and these very same agents who, by the way, have jobs because of the laws that were passed by Congress. So,
she's right about the fact that the tone and tenor that's being broadcast to the people in America is completely different than what happened with Obama, or even going back to when ICE was created after 9/11. But that's not the message. Where are the real spin doctors? And I'm not talking about Steve Miller either. There's got to be a way to get the message out to the masses that the only reason why we have all of this consternation, well, it's a couple of reasons. One, there's paid agitators, and they should really be exposed by now, by name and by company. Two, and I think China might be behind some of that. And two, the fact that the blue states are in open rebellion where all they have to do is let their local and state police work with ICE so they could reduce the amount of ICE agents and reduce the amount of protection that they need to go get the bad guys. And the third part of that is the collateral damage of the so-called good illegals would go down because there won't be as many ICE agents in every one of these towns. And that's the message. And they're so bad at sending that message out, that the consternation that we see is not ICE generated. Actually, they are the victims of violent insurgency for the most part, because peaceful protests don't spit throw rocks, blow whistles. You can blow whistles in block cars and all that kind of shit. It's really bad out there, and it's not really ICE's fault. So we're not going to enforce, the F ICE chant, ICE out. So do you mean as American citizens who this is supposed to be our sovereign nation that anybody could just fucking walk in here and just take up residency and say shit on you, but we got to pay taxes for their medical care, for their food, for their housing, for every fucking thing? It just doesn't make any sense. And if you can't win on that message, then you don't have no good messaging. So you got, so ICE out is, what does that mean? No enforcement at all? Only when you like it? I mean, it's stupid. And they're losing on that message. So, man, if the blue wave comes back, man, I think this country is really, really fucked.
As for policy discussions that will take place, Congress will have those. The president will decide on those. You saw yesterday Secretary Noem announced that DHS agents on the ground in Minnesota will begin using and wearing body cams. That's something DHS is looking to roll out nationwide, assuming they have the funding for it. So that could be part of the discussion. I know Tom Homan has been on the ground in Minnesota. He's there again today for direct dialogue with state and local officials to move these conversations forward as well. And I think you'll be hearing more from Mr. Homan tomorrow on some of the progress that has been made. So look, we're willing obviously to have this dialogue and to talk and to listen, but we are not going to concede in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and delivering on the mandate the president was given by nearly 80 million Americans to deport illegal alien criminals from our country.
Any preparation for a visit from Chelsea Rodriguez from Venezuela, and your statements on the political prisoners situation in Venezuela?
Sure. I don't have a date for a visit at this time. I know it is something that has been discussed, but no firm plans at this point. As for the release of the political prisoners, the president and this entire White House, and I think the whole country, should be very pleased to see that. It's a commitment that Ms. Rodriguez made, and she has kept, and we expect her to continue to keep it.
Regarding what Budweiser said during the Grammy Awards,
I have not spoken with ICE or the Department of Homeland Security or Secretary Noem with respect to enforcement at the Super Bowl, so I don't want to speak.
Oh my God. That's the question about whether ICE is going to be outside of the Super Bowl. Folks, if ICE shows up in any capacity at the Super Bowl, we might as well not even vote at the midterms or in 2028. Just let the liberal Democrats just have the country. It would be the most monumental mistake that Trump and his administration could ever make. Do you think it would be such a disaster? The optics alone. So even leaving any doubt on the floor that ICE will be involved anywhere in where the Super Bowl is, it's just absolutely the stupidest shit I have ever heard. And I'm pulling for some of these policies to get codified so we don't have to go back to the bullshit of 4 years ago under Biden. But if they send ICE anywhere near the Super Bowl, who gives a shit if Bad Bunny's there singing in Spanish? That's just so dumb to make that an issue. Oh my God damn it.
Speak on a topic that I don't have knowledge on. I'm sorry, but I would defer you to them. I'm sorry? Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's very ironic and frankly sad to see celebrities who live in gated communities with private security, with millions of dollars to spend protecting themselves, trying to just demonize, law enforcement, public servants who work for the United States government to enforce our nation's laws.
That is true. That is true. That's sad. And I thought we stopped listening to celebrities a long time ago in general, with the 2024 elections.
And you didn't hear this same type of uproar from celebrities in Hollywood when the previous administration allowed an invasion of our nation's borders and allowed innocent women and girls like Jocelyn Nungare and Laken Riley to be killed and raped and murdered at the hands of people who should have never been in our country in the first place. And now you have law enforcement who are simply trying to do their jobs to remove violent predators like those who took the lives of innocent Americans. There was no uproar from Hollywood and the elitist crowd at the Grammys then, but there is now. And I think that speaks to the unfortunate irony that we're seeing in Hollywood. I'm sorry?
President Trump approval ratings has went up in the Hispanic community since the Maduro's capture. What do you think about that? Because the legacy media said that the Hispanic community is scared about Trump policies.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. But what the president obviously did with respect to Venezuela was a great thing for all Americans, but especially Venezuelan Americans who fled Maduro's illegitimate regime because of the horrors of communism. And I think it's a good lesson for all Americans to learn. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline.
All right, man, that was a short one. And, but she said a few things. I just tell you, the Trump administration has its flaws from the man down. Okay. He has some character flaws. Everybody knows it. But his policies that he ran on, that he's kind of detracting from now, I thought was good ones. I think it was a winning strategy. But, some of the implementation is pretty bad. And Congress and the Senate, they're not really, if they don't really go to the mat, like, get rid of the filibuster and shit like that, a lot of stuff he wants to do is not going to get codified. And if he loses the midterms, the last 2 years of his administration is going to be just pure chaos. And if he loses both the House and the Senate, he's going to get impeached, right? It's as simple as that. And then indicted in the Senate. And then we'll have more chaos after that. Maybe that might be the best thing for the Republicans, because then at least my man, his vice president, will get a chance in office before it's all over. Anyway, so, hey, thanks for you guys stopping by. Every so often when I see her come up, I have to, do one of these lives. And some of the other folks, too, the Holman Live. You can go back to my channel. I like these political reaction videos. If you like them, just come by, man. Hit the like button on the way out. And I just keep them. I mean, I'm just like a regular dude. I tell you, as a black man in America, I was born in the Democratic Party, just like most of us. And unfortunately, it took me so many years to understand that they've been shitting on us for so long. And for some of you young folks out there, man, come to your revelations a whole lot earlier than 50-something. You know what I'm saying? I'm 67 now, and I'm not really proud of being duped for my whole life and giving votes to people who don't really give a shit about us as a population. And I'm not saying the Republicans give a shit about us, but at least they're honest about it. If you're going to get something, you got to get that shit by your own merit. We ain't giving you a goddamn thing. And that's all right with me, because that's pretty much how I live my life. Anyway, hey, everybody, have a great, what was it, Tuesday? Oh, I'm retired, so all my days bleed together, by the way. So have a great rest of the evening. Thanks for stopping by. Leave a comment. And, after this, on a repeat, if you have anything to say, leave me a comment as well. Hit the like button. I'd appreciate it. Whether you like it or not, just hit the like button. Hit the down arrow if you want to as well. I'd appreciate it. Our Payne, your favorite baby boomer, over and out.